Souse us therefore in the powdering tub of thy mercy.
that we may be tripes fit for the heavenly table,
Welcome, meatsmiths. You are listening to a Meatsmith Harvest
restoring husbandry to prosperity.
by means of the traditions of our fathers.
This dialogue picks up where we left off in our last episode's conversation. You can find part 1 on our website, YouTube, or iTunes. If the content resonates with you, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/meatsmith and donating a small monthly pledge. This goes directly toward more free media headed your way. Thanks for staying tuned for part 2. Seems like that was unthinkable in a Catholic world, to sell the family farm.
Yeah. That's a revolutionary idea.
Yeah.
Big time. That's what they had to break up. They did that in a targeted way during the French Revolution. And
Oh, yeah. Well, we had people come to our classes that are from Cuban families, French families,
right.
that even Russian families that have all experienced communism. And they all say, yeah, we had a family farm and it was taken.
Yes, she described her grandfather who produced tobacco.
That's right.
And had, he had figured it out. And I'm pretty sure he wasn't even the first generation owner of the land. I think it was his father's. But he had he had put his whole life into it. And cultivating very specialized tobacco, that grew very well and that was delicious and everything. And then in Cuba, they decided that the land belonged to everyone, so the government took it all.
Yeah.
But then they forced him to stay on it and work it. So it's not yours, it's ours, but you have to stay on it and you have to farm it.
Yeah.
And then he did that for a while, and then they're like, and you have to take up all of the tobacco and plant these crops that we tell you to.
Wow.
So he had to grow things that wouldn't even grow well in his soil, and he knew it.
Yeah.
Because, he's the farmer.
Yeah.
And but he had to. He was forced.
Wow.
And so I can't remember what it was, like corn and beans or something he had to plant there. And he's like, no, this is tobacco land. Like, this is not.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. It wasn't his, and he had to do it.
Wow.
He was forced.
Father Fahey talks about that very thing.
Yeah.
In his book on the Russian farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And did Ross McKnight talk about that with his French family land too?
Oh, probably. It's all over the history.
Yeah. It's just what revolutions do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the problem. We don't hear about it a lot. It takes extra research to get into it because the revolutionaries won.
Well, here's the thing.
So they wrote the history books.
That's right. Well, and then who was the quote that you mentioned to me the other day? Like, communism never worked except in one country, and it's here. It's sort of working because, the government doesn't have to take our land. We just sell it. We just get rid of it.
That's true.
For a profit. So we kind of do it for them, but we don't really know that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're not building legacies.
Yeah. Because ultimately, I think that was what the targeted goal was. You had to end the inheritance of the oldest child. You had to stop that because that's how you vitiate the localized family power.
Yeah.
Is you liquidate their estates. Mm-hmm. And here they, instead of doing some glorious revolution where they literally just come and murder the farmer and take the land, we use much more subtle methods, and we call into question the idea that a male child should inherit anything. Mm-hmm. Why? Just because he's a boy? Mm-hmm. Why not divvy it up evenly so it could be fair between all your kids? Which means you have to turn it all into cash, which means you have to sell it. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's the end of family land. You did it.
Yeah.
And you did it. We do it willfully. We choose to do it. Mm-hmm. Because ideology is ultimately a more powerful tool than
force.
Coercion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many examples of that kind of thing happening in this country. It's just like the soft communism, I guess.
Yeah. And that's why it's a very counter-revolutionary act to begin by weaning yourself from dependence upon the comforts. That's why I say when people, a technological or the apparent, I would say it's apparent comfort or ease that, borrowing
Yeah.
lots of money, capitalizing, can offer. Because ultimately that's a fake comfort. They'll sap you for everything you make in the end for that one. But weaning yourself from those things, that's why when people ask me, like, how could I, or one person did, how could I start farming? Like, what's the first thing, what's the best thing a person who doesn't have a farm could start to do that would at least be working towards that, getting on the land. And I think truly the answer is fast.
Yes.
I mean, and I tell this to myself too. It's not like I'm perfect in this way at all. But the best thing you could do is stop being dependent upon the artificial structure that comes at too high a cost of technology and the urban reality. Because once you're independent of that, then I think you can make a more qualified move to the country, to agrarian life. Because if you make it without that, then you're just going to go on like high octane fuel in a small tank. You're just going to go on enthusiasm. And you're going to go on it because you're really interested in it. You're interested in farming and you find it so attractive and you like to think about it, you love the research. But all that stuff, that interest, that temporary enthusiasm, that's like, you don't really need that to farm, actually. That's just going to burn out. It's going to burn out.
Yeah.
When you're chasing your cow across highways in people's gardens, like it burns right out.
Yeah.
Actually, the best thing you could do is to have the habit of not being a slave of those particular appetites for comfort that are supplied by a more urban existence.
Right. And there's gradations of fasting too. I mean, start off with just don't eat the processed food. Start with that.
Yeah.
Eat good
Abstain
fats.
from processed
right.
stuff. Because then, the perfect example of this is people always, again, sort of an unschooled, an unthinking enthusiasm, which I get. And I only know this because I've done it roughly 1,000,000 times. They buy lard pigs. Coonies.
Oh, right, yeah.
This happens all the time. Small pigs, coonies are American guinea hogs. And it's because they're small and someone tells them that they graze and they're really hardy and they're sweet in temperament. And they're small, so you can kind of manage them and you can it'll be a little more manageable for you to harvest. All good things, all great reasons. But you have failed to consider the yield. Like what that pig is going to give you. Its final cause.
Yeah.
The pork that comes from that animal. And it's because we kind of get clouded by our enthusiasm. But if you started fasting, the thing that you would desire is lots of lipid calories, lots of fat. And guess what 70% of a coonie's body mass is? It's fat, at least. That's the thing you want. And so even if you're not expecting it, but you have this habit of not overeating, just like you're saying, to some degree fasting from the processed food thing, you are going to rejoice at the yield of your coonie when you finally kill it.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, yes, what I really wanted was 75% fat. And you got it. You got 3 inches of back fat around that entire creature. And you got 2 gallons of leaf lard. And you got the remotest hint of a suggestion of a shadow of a pork chop. It's all fat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, when you talk about getting land, entering slowly into the farming lifestyle, it isn't right away. The first thing shouldn't be get a loan, get some land. It's get your lifestyle kind of in check. Wean yourself first from some of the luxuries and the artificial things.
Yeah.
You know, too much media included, whatever you can do, but going cold turkey might not be the best way to hop in.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I mean, that's honestly where a lot of the, I don't know, you can take delight in that. Because you find yourself immediately learning things that you did not know were even possible to learn, because that crutch has always been there. The moment you come up to a project, and you just decide, hey, wait a minute, I've always used that tool when I do this. I'm not going to use it this time. Let's see what happens. And it's incredible what will be revealed to you about that process. The things you did not know, the things you didn't even know were knowable, and then it becomes apparent to you. That's a lot of the fun. That's a lot of how I learned how to process meat and to cure it the way that we do. It's like, well, wait, there was a time when they did this step without refrigeration. So how do they do that? Well, the best way to figure it out is to go ahead and try it, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And then suddenly all of the old recipes that you might read, or the process itself, a whole world opens up to you. A whole culture surrounding the production of that single item, and narratives that shoot off from it into the way that people lived and how they created that thing. They all suddenly make sense. They become intelligible, and you get the real thing, not a diluted, liquid smoked, cooked slice of bacon.
Yeah. Well, speaking of dilutions, fasting has also been diluted in modernity. Some people, claim that there's a fasting going on, and the definition of fasting has changed. We've actually talked about fasting a lot on this podcast.
Yeah, we have.
And I wanted to mention, since you brought it up, a new book that has come across us that is a really good guide. It's actually called The Definitive Guide to Catholic Fasting and Abstinence. And it's by Matthew Pleasy. Okay. Because things have gotten kind of watered down in the church in recent times. And so this book shows how fasting has sort of developed across the centuries, because it kind of had to, with the Industrial Revolution and different people's lifestyles evolving in modernity. And so there had to be some adjustments made, because the working man had to work differently with his body. So some adjustments, were good depending on, but see, we've kind of got a sedentary lifestyle now, and we're still retaining the softer versions of fasting. So, a lot of it is you're left up to your own discernment. But this book goes into historically what it used to be, what fasting used to be, and how it got softened a little bit over time. But sort of tiers of fasting that, depending on your life, because everyone's different right now, and how much you think you can take on, again, with a wise, confessor kind of person to help you, this book can help. Because I wouldn't recommend jumping into fasting in a fit of enthusiasm, and just like the church has shown great wisdom in creating a calendar which allows for a good amount of fasting, but then also a good amount of feasting too.
Yeah.
Anyway, because I know our listeners are very enthusiastic people, and they jump in and they do everything, very all in. People are all in, and so there's good guidance though, to do that well.
Yeah, well, and it helps to know the context of it. I mean, you can certainly fast for many reasons, for the health benefits, which are manifold. But in the end, it's really the main reason. You would want to fast so that you could fulfill the duties of your state in life.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is such a simplifying goal. if you are, because ultimately your duties are simple, the things that are actually required of you. You know, especially as a parent, a husband, or a wife, your duty is to get your spouse to heaven, to make children and educate them so that they can go to heaven and fulfill your duties to God, you know, go to Mass. But that's it. I mean, there's, you know, pray every day. It's not a huge list, and it's not complex. It's the simple tools that you keep using throughout your whole life. But, so if it doesn't serve that, if it takes away from that, you cut it out. It's incredibly simplifying.
Yeah.
So it just learning the duties of your particular state, either as a man or a woman, whether or not you are married or a parent. Those would all determine what exactly your state in life is, and consequently what your duties are. And if you can fulfill your duties promptly and accept the trials that come your way patiently, as one good priest said, then fasting can help you.
It definitely can. Yeah. It helps even you out for sure. To that end, I think it's a good segue actually to the last thing I wanted to bring up with you. And that is, so we've done a couple of recordings now on community and kind of given our broad sweeping strokes, all of our little
We only paint with broad strokes, but no less absolute.
But I actually found the email that originally prompted all that discussion.
Okay.
And I wanted to read it because it actually brought up some points that I don't even think I even addressed, that we didn't address them. Not fully. And I think it can actually be a good ending to that whole series, not that it was a series, but the whole discussion, because it can help give us good direction towards a positive approach towards our true communities, which are our families. Because it's not that we're supposed to be like without community. Like that's not the version of spirituality and living that the church paints at all. We would just be islands, you know.
Right.
Especially like when you consider we have to go to Mass at some point, so we have to be near other people, you know. and liturgical living invites community, you know.
Oh yeah.
So, but I thought it was really interesting the way he asked the questions, because it really helps set the tone for, okay, how are we going to develop positively our family community?
Yeah.
Which I don't know if we actually covered. So I thought I'd read it really quick. I know it's going to jog some thoughts from you. So there's a nice little intro. And this is a gentleman in Montana, I believe. I'll keep his name out of it. But he's in Montana. As I've been learning your story, primarily through your podcast, I keep thinking to myself that I'd love to be able to sit down with you and ask you your advice on a dilemma that has been niggling at my wife and I for a number of years. We currently live in a small condo in Montana. We have 4 kids, age 6 down.
Oh.
Down to 7 months. The first 3 of which are boys.
Okay. That's... Yeah, the condo is a no can do.
Yes, not for much longer at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the first thing that I was like, oh, okay, that's a big consideration. Especially because 3 of them are boys.
Yeah.
Since before my wife and I got married, we have had the desire to live a more agrarian lifestyle. That is, in some way, to be able to be more self-sustainable, to use a popular buzzword. For various reasons, some legitimate and others not so legitimate, we haven't made that happen yet. Now, though, in the past couple of years, as the little boy energy levels increase, we have felt even more keenly the need for more space, animals, gardens, and all, as wholesome outlets for that energy. Our backyard is quite small, with only enough space for some small raised beds, which we are blessed to have. But anything beyond that is pretty much a no-go. Our dilemma then is that we are 15 minutes away from our church community, in which we have a lot invested and have developed some really deep, meaningful relationships. However, to buy anything within an hour of that community, even on an acre with nothing on it, is out of our budget.
Yeah.
As people that think very deeply about things and seem to have a very clear hierarchy of values, what would you say? Is it better to remain in a suburban condo and be really close to a vibrant church community in which you are loved and love in return, but also be crammed into a living space like a foot in a shoe, 2 sizes too small, and sacrifice the ideal of a thriving home economy? Or is it legitimate to move somewhere where you could afford to buy some acreage that is close to a church and give up the known and well-loved community for an unknown one? For some ecclesiastical point of reference, we are Orthodox Christians. Okay. Though not Catholic, I think it's safe to say from listening to you both talk that we hold many, if not all, the same values with regards to life in the church, the importance of regular attendance to divine services, living according to the seasons of the church, family prayer and devotion, etc. Any thoughts we would have are appreciated.
And I don't think we ever actually responded to this email in print form.
No. We are just basing 3 podcasts off of it.
No, this is what happens if you write too good an email. You don't get an answer.
I know, it's true.
In email form.
I know. It happens
It's
so much.
great. He just encapsulates the whole small family challenge. Yeah.
I love how he paints the picture of his living situation.
Yeah.
Because that is
That's what we did.
small consideration. Yeah, we had that same dilemma.
We sure darn did. I mean, we were in 1,100 square feet with a roommate and 2 little boys.
Yeah.
At one point. And that, like he says, that doesn't contain the boys.
And pigs and a growing business.
We had pigs in the yard too. That was a little nuts.
Yeah.
Also accidental, but and a garden and a business in the garage.
Yeah.
But I think just in reading it, the tension between the 2 communities. If you see it that way, there's tension between 2 communities there. And I think he would even agree that the larger one at the church is there to serve the smaller one, which is in his little apartment, to serve the family. And so that's the primary one.
It is, yeah.
And a tiny little apartment with 4 little boys, or 3 or 4.
3 boys, 4 kids, so the little girl
Yeah,
too.
little girl. That is not trivial. We tend to, it's even worse than just making light of it. We actually confer virtue upon those who live in small spaces because they choose to live in small spaces. It's like, oh, you're so, I don't know. I can't even think that way anymore, so I don't know what they say, but it's
minimalist.
It's minimalist.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's simple.
Yes.
It's that soft communism again, because Father McNabb talks about this too. The living situations in Dublin promote vice. So when I think about our children trapped in way too small of rooms together, they only fight.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then you extrapolate that to a larger setting of adults. It's only going to be a vicious environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because bodies need space.
Need space on account of bodies being in space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it's just non-trivial.
Yeah.
And I know it's like, oh, we'll just grit our teeth. That just means we have to learn a higher level of virtue with our children. We have to be better at teaching them to get along in a tiny, tiny, cramped space. And I don't buy that one either. I think that's wrong. Be humble. And I would say also that an apartment is not a thing indifferent, like you're saying. Apartment living is a new thing, and it is part of a concerted strategy. Not like a conspiracy or anything, but it's almost as if a group of people got together and thought about how to break up the family.
Yep.
somewhere.
Which happened in Poland.
With like
Yeah.
spirations of intellectual nature in a community of some kind. I don't know. With each other,
Community
spirating,
organizing.
something.
Oh, yeah.
And what they found out was, at least in Soviet Russia, is the first thing you need to do is make houses too small for large families. And you need to make sure that they can't be together at once in the same room.
That's right.
That they have to actually be separated. That was a concerted effort in architecture.
Yep. That was
So,
a strategy.
Yeah, it's a strategy. It's not indifferent. It's part of the strategy.
By intellectuals.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like all of our apartments are specifically designed to do that. I'm just saying all of our apartments are specifically designed to do that. Okay, it's not the family home. So we can, with complete and utter certainty, reject whole cloth the idea that you are minimalist or humble or superior for having a small home with children. And I don't think he's actually even tempted by that. So this probably has nothing to do with what he's saying, but he wants to be close to the community, the larger one, and I get that. But to regard that apartment as that is a non-trivial disorder. That is worth, like, you don't need, that's cause enough to get out of that. A family needs a large home.
Yeah.
Unashamedly, unreprovedly, buy a big house.
Yeah.
So that you have space. It's just more responsibility to order. So don't worry about like, oh, but our children won't learn how to be nice to each other because they'll be able to get away. It's like, no, not really. If you continue to have children, even at 4, even in a big house, they still have to learn how to live together.
Yeah.
You're not sacrificing any of the virtues of getting along and peace and sharing. You're in fact getting more space to keep in an ordered way. So it requires more virtue to live in a bigger house.
The poor's head in hand bear I, bedecked with bays and rosemary.
How many people do you know who are building their home culture around seasonal harvest and feasting? Or that are hunting as you are for self-sufficiency and back-to-the-land values? Or that share your artist's passion for human-scale meatcraft? At farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we've created a community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world with these shared goals, and 2 major places for them to learn from and inspire one another. First, we have our semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Heartland homestead in Oklahoma. Come meet Brandon, get your elbows greasy, and over the course of 3 days, kill, cut, cure, and cook 2 pigs completely. You'll rub those greasy elbows with other meatsmiths from around the country, sharing meals and conversations to inspire you for years to come. Secondly, for more remote learning, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources 5 years deep now. And both our on-site classes and online program include access to our most unique and rewarding private community Facebook page, Meatsmith Table, which is the only international network by and for homesteaders harvesting animals on a domestic scale using traditional and regional methods. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you and support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today.
What I think happened is that the generation before us lived large in the sense that they had big homes and they had entertainment rooms, and they had big couches everywhere.
I remember those.
And
the bonus room.
Bonus rooms and man caves and bars and home bars. It's just like the excess space was used for consumption, not production. And so I think maybe our generation looked at that and like, I don't even want a TV in my house,
Oh yeah.
And so but we kind of like, because we weren't grounded, we kind of went in the other end of the spectrum is like just minimalist, just nothing. Like I don't want anything, because all I saw was a bunch of materialism or like way too much entertainment based structures in the home. That we just kind of went the opposite end of the spectrum. Whereas I think what we're saying is you do need a big house. And what we're experiencing now is we need music rooms, and we need home gyms, and we need, all these outlets, game rooms. We need all these outlets for our kids to go learn in. Like I have a whole schoolroom just for schooling. A library, like a home library. Imagine a quiet room, where the room is just quiet.
Yeah, and you need like a 10,000 square foot house for that.
Not really.
Well, the quiet part.
Yeah, maybe. We could put like sound padding in there or something, But the point is, we have a 2,700 square foot home now.
That's huge for us.
Plus a garage. Yeah. So we're at well over, is it 3,000 then? Yeah, probably.
Definitely.
So when we were at 27, and our garage was a disaster, I was kind of like, I need one more room for like that outlet of like games, or like a place where people can be.
Wallace has a carving station in there.
Yeah.
That's where you read a lot to them.
That's
they have
right.
a table on which they can make rosaries, which they're doing right now. Like it's all the making that they do.
The crafts.
Yeah.
Exactly. I do like more lecture type schooling in there, so it's loud, it's more just engaging with they're allowed to engage in that room. But the other schoolroom is more quiet, so it's just a study room.
Yeah.
And that's been really, really good to have that separation. And now that I basically took our garage, I put really nice rugs all over the floor, and lots of tables and bookshelves, and there's even like a little Lego corner for little kids.
They don't even play with anymore.
They don't even, because the boys are older. Yeah. But it's like, like blocks and things.
Yeah. So
the little babies can play in there. But yes, Wallace has a carving station. There's the game corner, and it's where we'll do some art and even sewing, and that's what a family needs, is it needs that
space.
And I know some bigger families that are they're for some reason, they're building houses because they have, a growing family, and a lot of them feel this conflict. They shouldn't, but they're kind of feeling like they have to apologize.
Right. For building a big home.
For building a big home.
How opulent. Luxurious.
Yeah.
Silliness.
It is the absolutely correct thing to do.
Yeah.
To build a home for your family, to grow all of the virtues, to grow your skills and talents. But you do need that, or the kids, if they're crammed in their own house and there's no outlet for, working out at home or listening to music or creating music. Then they're going to go to the city.
Yeah.
They're going to leave the home and go get all that stuff elsewhere.
I would say that a wife, a mother, has a right to a big home.
Yeah.
Technically.
That would,
one of sufficient size to fulfill her duties to educate her children. She has a right to it.
It would be nice, yeah.
And so the dads have to supply that. It's because if you think about, we only have rights to things because we have duties. So it's in the fulfillment of our duties. If you are the gatekeeper, you have a right to the keys, because without the keys, you can't be the gatekeeper. You can't do it. So it's always relative to our duties. And if you are going to be at home with your children,
Yeah. So I'm
educating
not
them,
going crazy.
forming them.
Yeah.
If you're homeschooling, especially, you have a right to a big home.
That's very kind of you to put it that way, but I think you're right. And I think that some larger families, they don't give themselves that. They think they almost put themselves in that between a rock and a hard place. And they're like,
Yeah.
I have to have all these kids because that's, the way that the church says, or this or that, or they legitimately want to
Yeah.
build a family. And then they're kind of, so that's one hard place. And then the rock is the culture, which says, live minimalistically, don't give yourself material goods. And it's like, no, hang on. If you're going to have material beings and many of them, providing for their intellectual growth, their emotional health,
Yeah.
and you don't want them together if they're just going to fight. They're not going to be able to, especially when they're young. They haven't built sufficient virtue yet. You don't want to get them trapped in habits, bad habits.
Yeah.
But to grow their bodies too, like we need to provide those material things.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's going back to the idea that because I guess I'm susceptible to these kind of arguments like, well, our house is smaller, so we'll just be forced to train our children to be that much nicer to each other. And it's like, that's a false dichotomy. You could just go ahead and do that in a big house too.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah, don't let them ignore each other.
do both.
Yeah.
Like it's not, you don't have to, it's not either or. I don't know if this particular person is struggling with it from that angle at all. But for me, hearing it put the way he put it, that's my mind goes to that, to not think, oh, I know for the sake of the larger community, we'll suffer a little bit for this more essential community, which is the family. And he mentions the hierarchy, and that is it. I mean, the hierarchy brings clarity. You know what you should do. Because anytime you say yes to a thing, you're murdering something else. Like that's just almost,
Yeah.
Usually it's not that extreme, but that's how it feels. And unless you have a hierarchy, then you're just going to try to say yes to everything and keep everything alive. And it's like, no, you have to murder things. You have to shut things down. Not because they're evil, but they are lesser goods. And you can't let the lesser good detract from the greater good. That's actually the definition. Well, no, I don't know if that is. But anyway, yeah, so to that, I would say, the hierarchy is the community of your family first. That's the top.
Yeah.
That is the what was the word I'm looking for? That's the indivisible unit. I mean, that's of society.
Yeah.
Irreducible
Right.
unit. And so you need to do what's best for that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that the extended community of a parish is better for your family, as positive as it might be, than a proper space to raise your children in. I mean, that's why we got out of that little house. It's like Wallace couldn't go outside without getting yelled at by our grumpy neighbors. And he was 3. And it was happening then because, stuff was landscaped. And there were like wood chips that shouldn't be on the sidewalk. Just silly little things. And I'm sorry, that is not the place to raise. Boys especially. They need to go out and get bit and stung and scratched and broken. And they need to, because what happens when they have that space, they go out and they they do get busted up as they encounter the chaos of the natural world. That's just what they do. But they also sort of automatically relish, this is what I found, in bringing order to it.
Yeah.
And they're, they're learning order themselves, so it's hard to do, and they're definitely motivated by things that they are pleased by, rather than other orders. Like you might want them to weed whack around the house, and they don't even realize that that's a thing, But they do like to put order on out there, and that is a good thing for them. And if they don't have that right outside their front door, they're gonna have to learn it some other way, and I don't know how you do that.
Yeah. No, it's a human scale thing. Again, it's definitely a family needs their own place.
Yeah.
Not shared by anyone else, and where you can grow.
Yeah, and I think it is back to the idea of a duty too. Like it's, of course, here again, this is communism. The fact that we think this.
Yeah.
That a big house means rich. A big house means unjust gain, unfair. You're taking it from somebody else, or that we even look askance at anyone for having a big home. And big defined however you want to define it. I mean, ours is 2,700 square feet. Feels big to me. We definitely feel it though. Like we use every corner.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's wonderful. And just the idea that we would, in a big house. We immediately have this roll of the eyes and this gasping breath at the idea that someone would dare to have a big home. That is communist. Because what you have in an ordered society is the family at the center. And so, as a unit, and so it would be proper to the dignity, but primarily to the duties of a family to have a big house. It's like you have to.
Yeah.
Because what you have to do, if you want to go to heaven, is make children and educate them.
You have to educate them.
You have to educate them.
Yeah.
And however you do that, you must do that.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. You're going to have to answer to your judge about that one.
Well, and in this culture,
so it's because of the duty.
Yeah.
It's not. That's why it is altogether fitting and proper for a family to have a large home.
Yeah.
Because that's your job. That's like, man, you got to do that.
Yeah.
Before everything else.
Well, just like you said, it's part of the right, maybe, of the mother to have a home to be able to do this.
Yeah.
To educate the children, because it naturally falls in the mother's lap most of the time, unless you're doing like outdoor men things, then naturally it falls in your department. But that I can't do it if I'm stuck in a little room.
Yeah.
It won't happen. And we're in a culture where I cannot really depend on outside institutions to do this.
Right.
Maybe there's the unicorn institution where you live, and that's for you to discern. But at the level of the rules of the church, it's our job to educate them. And if I can discern that I can delegate a certain part of their education to someone else in good conscience, that they won't be compromised, then fine. But I don't see that where I'm at. So, I have to take it on, and I'm willing to roll my sleeves up and do it. But that means that there's some material needs there that need to be supplied. So there's no need to apologize for it.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing everything in reason, I basically have carte blanche as far as buying curriculums with you, and I do have to limit myself. I can't. I just bought like so many books because I'm redoing. Well, okay, we looked at our home family library, and we realized most of this is revisionist, Americanist, stuff that you grew up with, which was not all evil, but definitely colored. And so we're like, ooh, we need to get a new library, you know, and so I won't do it again in the next 3 years, what I just did, but I did buy basically world history, you know, and well, because I have a high schooler now. That's change
why.
things.
Yeah.
And he's voracious now. I mean, 6 months ago he was not a reader, but I mean he was, but he's loving reading now. And so I'm like, oh, I got to capitalize on this. So anyway, so I buy carefully, you know, I buy used books when I can, and I don't actually, and this is a temptation for women too, is that new, better, bigger curriculum is going to fix all my problems, you know, and it's like, no, just keep plowing away at what you got. You know, there is a place for reevaluating, but anyway, I'm just saying, you know, women, it's good to be able to have that freedom of the purse to buy within reason what you feel you need.
Yeah. That's what the purse is for.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, that's literally why you make the money.
Yeah.
Dads.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It should all be blown on educating your children on your home.
And feeding them well and the whole... Yeah, but that's it. I don't know.
That's the final cause of it.
We don't go on vacations. It's just all towards building up the soul, the bodies and souls of our kids, and so we can maybe you and I stay alive a little bit, to see them grow, you know. Yeah.
And I also just love the idea that the family could have so much dignity that you get to the state where you have these manor homes, and I'm like, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
That seems about right, you know, in older parts of the world. Yeah. And that was at the center of the crosshairs of the revolutionaries. Had to tear that down as soon as possible.
That's right. Well, and when you do that, all of a sudden now you have to hire people. You have to hire gardeners and butlers. And I mean, not that we're doing that, but I'm at the point where I'm trying to hire a cleaning lady. I'm trying to hire, and I have hired people to help with the kids and just some domestic help, basically. And that's ordered. We don't need to apologize for that.
No. And that's all at the same time, basically teaching your children to do all the chores. Also, that's another thing that's not dichotomous. It's not like if you hire some help in the home that your children suddenly lays about and do nothing. There's plenty to do. Yeah. And plenty of chores, and our kids have lots of chores. Yeah. Wallace can officially move the ruminants with the infinite convoluted mess that is the electric polywire. Yeah. That pretty much requires a completely novel setup every time you move them, which is twice a day. But he's got it. He can do that now.
Yeah. I should say too, like, if you're contemplating a move like this, you know, just trusting that God will provide the grace that you to fulfill those duties of your state in life. If you're faithful to Him and the conscience, the directives that you're getting from Him in fulfilling those duties for your family, you know, obviously He's... Yeah. So if you're staying close because you're like, oh, I need my community for babysitting, or I need, because I just don't have any support system, I don't have any support networks, or like the grandparents are gone or whatever, like, that's okay. You know, I mean, you weigh everything individually, but we don't have much of a support network here. We have good people and good friends, but we're not relying on anyone. And it's God, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, especially the Sacred Heart, man, there's promises to people who are devoted, and one of them is the grace to fulfill the duties of your state in life. Yeah. Hands down.
Yeah, and I've heard a good priest say that if you do this to the best of your knowledge, to prudently fulfill the state in your life, your duties, then God will cash that check. I mean, that's what He'll do. If you're looking for, you know, a seaside villa with jet skis and stuff, it's not exactly your duties, but you're not tempted by that. So it's not that. If it's looking at your boys thinking, oh, they need some space, they need some outside, they need a place where I can train them to develop virtue, that is your duty. And that's the duty that God gave you.
Yeah.
So he wants you
He
to
will
sacrifice
honor
and do what you need to do to fulfill it. And the other thing I would say too is we had a 1,600 square foot house with 7 children, right?
Yep, that's what it was.
And our living room was smaller than this office. It was it was 1,600 square feet, but it was a very weird house. There was no common space. The commonest space where we could all get was interrupted by a staircase right in the middle of it. It was very weird, which basically means you had to watch the babies all the time because there were 2 steps that basically bisected the house right down the middle. And so you couldn't fence it off. You could not, which means the crawling babies, as they were learning, well, they just learned how to fall all the time. Like all of our kids learned the stairs right away. But it was nuts. It was stressful. No one could just be in that room. We could not just be together. And that was the biggest room in the house. It's the only place we could all be together. But I wish like it's hard when you're at the stage where your kids are still little and you're thinking proleptically that in the future, I could imagine that it would be hard to do this in a small place like this. But maybe you can't imagine the specifics. But trust me, you're right. The specifics they're real. Like the concrete struggles and challenges of that small space were way harder than we imagined. And they are on top of each other. And it is too much. So at this moment, it might just be a hint to you because you're not quite seeing it. Like you're just skating by, they're still little. But that hint that it is real. Like don't ignore that just because it's not in front of you and tangible yet. It really, they can't be sitting on top of each other. Like they need a little more space for their bodies.
Yeah.
That's real and true.
Yeah,
That's a proper observation.
Exactly. That's using your senses to bring knowledge into your intellect, and you are reading that correctly.
Yes, yeah. It is too small, and it will only get harder in ways that you can't imagine. It gets bad.
Yeah.
So
you can trust that.
That's true. I'm trying to think of even concrete examples, but I'm not, because I think as the mechanisms of self-preservation, my mind has erased them. But
yeah,
they were just... Our boys are still kind of on top of each other, literally, in their room. It's 3 bunk beds.
That's why I moved their room.
Yeah.
Yeah, into our homeschool room.
Yeah.
We're trying to get them more space.
It's one of the bigger rooms in the house. And that's great. And they all have a desk in there. But then they also have the school room. So you're really able to order things so that throughout the day, they have places to go.
Yeah.
To do certain things. And that is the tranquility of order.
That's when you get peace in the home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important. And we have a parlor, which is so fun. We have a living room and a parlor. And the parlor was the formal dining room, but we've dutifully turned it into a parlor.
Yeah.
With chairs, rug, guitars hanging from the walls.
Yeah.
And a banjo.
Yeah.
And it's...
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about that. We'll talk about that next time maybe, because I think a lot of it does... It's good to talk about the good life, which is very, very well-rounded, especially if you're farming with a family. You need to be able to feed your soul too, and that music piece is so key with a big family. It's required.
Yeah.
You have to have music filling the home.
Yeah, and part of that is, like you've read from the Charlotte Mason, the idea of strewing the path of your children with things that are true, good, and beautiful. The right books on the shelves that are available. That's right. The other, like these little availability. I think what you're getting in a big house is just accessibility to the true, good, and beautiful. And you can't underestimate that because we're physical beings and we operate in space. And if the bookshelf is really hard to get to, or it's up in mom and dad's room, or it's in the closet, or it can't be where the baby is because she just crawls over to it and pulls all the books off the shelf and rips the papers out.
Yeah.
So it's in a weird place. Like, it's not accessible. And the big house allows you to more properly plan how to make these things accessible. Like, we would not have I would have gotten a banjo had we lived in a smaller house, but it would not be accessible.
Yeah.
And now we have the boys pulling it down all the time. And our son, who is more gifted at music, he's like, got to figure it out in 2 days. He knows how to play the banjo. But it's great because even the ones that aren't as naturally gifted at him, they still pick it up.
Yeah. And they're good at it.
And they work at it more because it's accessible. It's just there. So that accessibility is really important. And you get that with a properly ordered space.
Heights.
Yeah.
And width.
You're using elevation on the walls.
For your baby's situation. Yeah. I mean, just last night was the first time I walk out because I just laid the baby down, and 2 of our boys are playing together. One was on the banjo, one was on the guitar, and it was like beautiful. Yeah. That's the first time I remember them ever playing.
Were they actually trying to figure something out together?
Well, you looked at me, you were like, you know, like, don't say anything, you know, but it's like, one was doing chords on the guitar, and the other one was doing a little bit more picking style on the banjo, and it was like they were coordinated. Yeah. There was harmony. There was cooperation. Wow. Oh, it was just, I just walked by and pretended I didn't see it, but it was just like, wow, that right there is why we like do everything, you know.
And you have to carve out space for that in the chaos. Yeah. And it has to be intentional. You have to do it as part of your duty, or it won't happen.
Yeah. But it's all worth it when it happens.
Yeah.
Wow. All the sacrifices are just for that.
Also why everyone needs a walk-in cooler and a butcher shop. I'm serious.
Yeah.
On their family farm.
Yeah. I know. It's important, and the kids need to learn how to cook. So yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking that too, like an outdoor kitchen space, whatever it is. If it's an indoor butcher shop or just an outdoor summer kitchen type of thing, but that overflow is really important. If it's a processing kitchen, like maybe that's where you do all of your canning or your,
slaughter.
Bulk food prep. Yeah, you're slaughtering. It's important to have that.
Yeah. Which may mean you have to move to a place where the big houses can be had without going into extravagant amounts of debt.
Yeah.
And there are places like that still. Oklahoma is one of them, but we have hurricanes here now, so.
Land hurricanes.
Yeah. Land hurricanes.
No, when Oklahoma's not trying to kill you, it's really lovely.
Pretty nice, yeah. I know, it looks really bad on paper, which is why I think it's still pretty affordable for people to come out here. We have all of the ticks, all of the snakes, all of the tick-borne illnesses, now officially all of the natural disasters.
You know, it's funny.
I used to say we have everything but hurricanes.
Oh, wow.
Check that one off the list. We do.
Well, and then like just 2 weeks ago when we were having one of our classes, your phone gave you a little buzz. Yeah. And then you're like, what's that? And it's your little weather app. It tells you when the next crisis is going to happen. What did it say?
Stagnant air. It was like the same warning I get when there's an extreme thunderstorm on the way or a tornado watch. It said stagnant air.
Look out.
So what the other natural disaster you can get here is air that's too still. It's too calm. Yeah. That's in Oklahoma. That's a natural disaster. That's an extreme weather event when the weather is doing too much nothing. Just stagnant. Be careful.
We looked around. These the students were there, like, is that a thing? We're like, this is the first time I'd heard of it.
Stagnant.
Yeah. It's true. Meat Smiths, thank you for joining us and for listening to our take on all things meat making, householding, and culture keeping. We hope it's helped you in growing your home around the harvest.